Hi, let's talk about the Bible, our sacred book, the sacred book of all Christians. How did we get the Bible? Unlike most religions of the world that has their sacred book either written by the founder of that religion or purportedly handed over to them by a spirit being or a divine entity, the Bible didn't come like that. In fact, the Bible has had an interesting history, controversies here, arguments there, um, issues that has to do with the history of the Bible. The funny thing is that the Bible survived it, and today the Bible is still the world's largest printed book and still growing. So, how did we arrive at the Bible? All right, see, the Bible's history started with the writing of Moses. Now, if you look through the scriptures, we're told that Moses completed the writing of certain books. Now, this is referred to as what we call today Bible or Biblica or Biblos, which actually means the books. Now, in the time of Moses and in the time of the Palestinians and the days of Jesus Christ, it wasn't called the Bible. Now, what was it called? It was called the scriptures or the writings or the books, which later metamorphosized into what we call the Bible. So, how did we get the Bible? Now, the Bible began its history with the writings of Moses, which then were written in scrolls. In those days, the average Jew were illiterate. If you remember, Moses was tutored in all the knowledge and wisdom of Egypt. So he was an educated man, very, very advanced. So it was about the only one, not the only one, but about the only one who was educated enough to pen down anything. So all the revelations, all the instructions, all the laws that he got from God, he penned them down in what we call scrolls or writings. All right, you understand? Now, these were the writings that were included in the Ark of the Covenant. Now, as time goes on, other prophets came and they were led by God. They were spoken to by God to address certain issues with the nation Israel. Each of them, when they come, they pen down what they believe God is telling them, what they believe that God is asking them to do. They pen it down in what we call a scroll. A scroll is just like something like this. A scroll is just something like this. That's why we call it a scroll, just like I scroll it up like this. And anytime they want to read it, they bring it down like this. And then they read. Or in some cases, scrolls are written in such a way that when you want to read it, you open it like this and you read, and then you roll it back together in papyrus. That's a scroll. So most of the writings of the prophets of Moses were contained in different scrolls. And then the scribes, the educated scribes, the historians and the writers of the history of the nation Israel, or a rabbinical school, that is a school of people learning or understanding a particular prophet, like in the case of Elisha to Elijah, Gehazi to Elisha, etc., etc. We have schools like that. They were painstakingly being copied manually. Now, this was a form that the so-called writings or scriptures or Biblos, like it was later called years later, where this was the form they were in. All right, all these writings of the prophets and the writings of Moses and later the writings of people like David that were held in high esteem were called the hagiographa, that is the sacred books of the Jews. Now, these were in the form of scroll. They were not compiled together. They were not a single entity of a book, but they were in different scrolls that takes a lot of effort to scroll through to get them and to read. Now, this was the form they were in until the conquest of Israel. Now, when Israel were conquered, they were introduced to other nations, especially the Greeks. You know, Alexander conquered the world in those days and introduced Greeks as the common language. Albeit before that time, the original writings of the hagiographa, the original language was in the Hebrew, the old Hebrew that is written in consonants. Now, it was the effort of what we call the Masoretic books that helped the understanding and the interpretation of the old Hebrew language. Don't forget, the hagiographa is the sacred book of the Jewish religion. That contains the writings of Moses, that is Genesis, what we call Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy today, and then the writings of the great prophets, those prophets they see as being from God, and then David and Solomon, those were respected kings, and some of their advices and songs. All this compilation form what we call the Hagiographa. Just 12 of them. 22 of them. Now, these were the sacred books of the Jewish people. Now, when they were conquered and they were forced to go to other nations, there was a need to convert, also translate this hagiograph into other language, basically, majorly the Greek, which has become the world language as we have English today, the common man's language in those days. So they had to translate it, albeit without reservation, because the Jewish tradition, the Jewish religion is a bit reserved up till now. There's a sort of reservation in the manner of approach and execution of the Jewish religion, even the Jewish culture. But when the hagiographa was translated into Greek, that reservation was lost. That is what brought out what we call the Septuagint. In the time when the Septuagint were being written, the Israelites were already in diaspora. They had been scattered all over the known world then. So they had come across other cultural religions and all the other things. So some of them believed that after the destruction of the temple, that there were no word again from God. There were no prophet again. So some took it upon themselves to recount their own experience, to rewrite what they believe is the lost book of Moses. Some of these writings are what manifested or translated or metamorphosized into what we call the Apocrypha. Now, for you to understand the book called the Apocrypha, these are the extra books in the Bible of the Catholics. Or if you are used to the Good News translation, there is also those books included in the Good News translation. Example of them are the Tobias, the Sirach, the First and Second Maccabees, the Judith, and etc., etc. These are some of the books in what we call the Apocrypha. Now, the Apocrypha has been shrouded in controversy from day one, basically because of what I told you now.